My grandfather, I take after him. He had the opportunity to go to the NFL. He's always been an incredibly high achiever. He has like a day named after him because he's a famous doctor where I'm from. So I took a very different route as far as that goes. Um, Somewhat similar actually in regard to the work that we do with people, but I'd say it's in my blood.
This is the CLIMACO podcast.
Welcome to the CLIMACO podcast. We have a very, very special guest for you today. He is a former NFL player turned leadership coach. He helps extraordinary people achieve impossible goals. Keyen Lage. Welcome to the show, Keyen. I am so honored to have you here.
Thank you, Leo. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, man. Let's start off with something easy. For those who may not know you, tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are.
Yeah, so I'm an explorer by nature. I have the Viking blood in me. So raiding and conquering and going after new experiences and traveling to new lands is in me and who I am. Where I'm from doesn't necessarily represent that. I'm from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which is most people haven't even heard of.
Very quiet town.
Very, very quiet. So the nature of where I'm from is very passive and very staying where you are and not very expansive in regard to the individual. So once I got done with my short-lived NFL career, I moved to Miami, drove my car down here, packed all my shit up, moved down with a buddy, and that was about 7 years ago. And I started off as a personal trainer and got bored with that and moved into more of the internal health side of things, dealing with people with autoimmune conditions and different digestive disorders. So created a program for people with those type of conditions. I quit my job as a trainer and scaled that product online, and then moved to Medellin, Colombia about 5 years ago.
Okay.
Lived there for a year, and then got a little bored with the internal health side of things and moved entirely into the mental emotional space, helping high achievers be able to perform at even higher levels. And been doing that ever since for the last 4.5 years, traveling around the world, able to live and be wherever I want, working with different types of people. I've worked with only women for a period of time, for a whole year.
Wow.
I work with different ambitions that people have based off where I'm at in my life. Sometimes it's more business oriented, sometimes it's more relationship oriented, but I like to mold my business around what I'm inspired to learn about, what I'm excited to move towards. I moved back to Miami most recently because I wanted to get more in person with people. So I have some online still, but also some in person. And I'll be taking a big traveling excursion here the second half of this year. But
That's
freedom
awesome.
and a personal expression are two things that are very prevalent in me in my life.
That's beautiful. Who was Keyen in high school, and how did that guy become an NFL player?
Well, the dream was always there. Since I was 10, I said I wanted to be able to go. My little brother recalled maybe like a year ago, I didn't even know this story existed, but you remember when I was in high school, I was driving him somewhere. I think he was maybe like, I don't know, 8 or 9 at the time. And he was like, Keyen, you really think you're going to go to the NFL? I just looked at him and I just said, yeah. Like there wasn't like an emotional charge. Like, yeah, I'm going to do it. It's going to be, it was just like, yeah. And so I've always had this.
There was no doubt.
Yeah. It was just kind of like, yeah. But I also think there's a certain level of acceptance of if it didn't happen, there was there was okayness in that, which is kind of odd. It's just like, yeah. And if I don't, then okay.
Right.
So for now it's yeah. Right. So I've always been very ambitious and driven and forward thinking and had high levels of self-belief. But the difference between then and now is I'm much more of an integrated person. I believe I was more of a people pleaser. I was very much driven and ambitious, but I was also very in tune with other people's emotions and feelings.
Right.
I was always trying to make sure that I was very connected to other people and made sure they felt heard, they felt accepted by me, because I was a lot. I've always been a lot. I've always been someone that's performed at a really high level, and I've always been a relatively good-looking person, smart, with really good family background and connection with them. And so I can easily be intimidating people. And so because of that, I was always very focused on how other people were thinking and feeling when they were around me. And I think there was when I got out of football and got into the real world of business and life and entrepreneurship, where I had to address that and deal with that in order for me to be able to move beyond where I was financially and career-wise.
Why do you think you had this confidence and drive at such a young age?
It's a great question. I don't know. Ever since I can remember, I mean, remember when I was in third grade, was doing push-ups by myself without my family ever really having to tell me.
Third grade.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
My mind has always been very, very forward thinking. So I believe I was born with it. I think my grandfather, I take after him. He had the opportunity to go to the NFL. He's always been an incredibly high achiever. He has like a day named after him because he's a famous doctor where I'm from. So I took a very different route as far as that goes. Right. Somewhat similar actually in regard to the work that we do with people. Mm-hmm. But I'd say it's in my blood. It's in my DNA. I can't really attribute it to anything because I feel like I've always had it. There wasn't like in a moment or event that...
Just who you are.
Yeah, just who I am.
How you're wired. Mm-hmm. How has playing football affected and changed your life?
Oh, man. Football gave me so many things. So, like I said, I was always very in tune to other people's emotions and feelings.
Right.
And so at a young age... I would forego maybe how I was thinking or feeling because I wanted someone else to feel good. So football for me was an outlet for me to be able to not regard anybody else's emotions.
Right.
So there was a day my mom recalled where I came back from my first practice in third grade and she was like, "How was it?" And I was all beat up and like grass all over me. She's like, "Are you okay? Like, is everything fine?" I looked at her and I was like, "Mom, I could hit people and not get in trouble for it." Which is like kind of like a psychopath, but like that shows how in tune I am with how other people are feeling around me.
Yes.
And so I was never like the roughhouse kid that was
got
always
to let go.
Exactly. Boom, there it is. Football gave me an outlet to let go. And so emotionally I didn't have to regard anyone. It was actually part of the sport and it was favored to be able to be the most crazy, wild animal that I could be on the field. So it gave me an outlet to be able to express myself in a way that I couldn't off the field. I mean, along with that, if you're a football player, you receive a lot of praise. I think the NFL is kind of like a pinnacle of success, at least in America.
Yep.
So I received a lot of praise from a lot of people. Being in a position of high status and high regard is something that's always just felt like home to me. So naturally, I'd gravitate towards something that's going to give me the feeling of being in that position.
That makes sense.
And also from my family, received a lot of praise and acceptance. It gave them something to be excited about.
For sure. Very proud of you.
Yeah, very, very proud. Yeah. So there were so many different elements to why football was so good for me, but when it got done, there's ironically a level of relief that came with it. So I don't know if you want to go into that.
Pressure, right?
Absolutely. So yeah, I technically made it, but then I was told because of a neck injury I'd never be able to play again. I cried my eyes out initially, but there was that absence of pressure that I felt for the first time that I wasn't even aware that really existed because that's just my inherent way of being, which is a bit odd, but yeah, I noticed an absence of pressure, noticed that big chunk of the pie of who I was just gone. And there was this relief and this excitement for what was to come that ultimately took me down the path of how I've lived the last 7 years. So there was a level of optimism and excitement in that transition of knowing, hey, I can be anything or do anything. So what is it that I want to be or do? It was very exciting to me to think about that.
That's awesome. I read somewhere that only 0.23 of high school football players actually make it to the NFL. What was that process for you of actually being drafted? What does that look like for someone who's never seen that process before?
Yeah, so I never got I was undrafted, so I had my opportunity being undrafted, so I never got technically drafted. But it's like being at the top of anything, everybody's incredible. Like everybody's incredibly talented. They have smarts. They're gifted.
They're fast.
Yeah, incredibly fast, incredibly big. So the thing that I had to really focus on was being able to focus on my mental game, being able to not allow things to bother me. And I think that's what really allowed me to thrive at the highest level. I was an incredible athlete, but I think the part that separated me from other guys that were incredible athletes was my ability to be able to move on to the next play or have a very short memory in regard to things that happened before. There were so many things along the way that happened that, I mean, tears that were shed, moments where I thought I'd never be able to play again due to a few different injuries that I had, that I just, for some reason, just kept showing up over and over again. So when it came down to the actual process of getting into the NFL, it didn't feel that difficult because of all of the shit that I went through prior to it, that it just felt like, yeah, this is what I kind of deserve based off of the time and energy and effort that I've expended getting to this point.
Your drive and dedication was paying off.
Yes. Yeah. So it was, fun. It was super fun and exciting being able to go through the process of feeling like a hot girl. I was just like getting attention from all these teams.
Right.
And being able to play in that and like to see the fruits of the labor actually start to happen, and to see the how the thoughts that I had about what I knew was possible were actually coming into fruition, which I think is like one of the most gratifying feelings in the world.
Right.
Which is what I still hunger for, is feeling satisfaction associated with belief when there's not evidence to support it. Right? Being a white kid from South Dakota, going to a smaller college, went to Division I AA college, the likelihood of getting to the NFL was not very high. So being able to be in the feeling associated with knowing I believed in something when there wasn't really the physical proof to show it,
Right.
is, I would say, single-handedly one of the most gratifying feelings that I've ever felt, and that I want to continue to feel as I continue to ascend in whatever I'm doing. Being able to set those bars high, to be able to go after that feeling of knowing that I created what was not in my comprehension at the time.
Right. To have a dream, to have a goal, and then to go live it.
Yes.
It's amazing. How many of your teammates in college went to the NFL?
Maybe there was one other one from my class. There's probably like, during my 4 years, maybe like 4, 5 that had the chance.
Wow.
Yeah, maybe 6, 4, 5, or 6. Yeah.
That's very small. Just a handful.
Yeah, not very much. But I never really thought about that. When I think about what I want, I don't really think about probability or likelihood. Like, it just doesn't really exist in my mind. It's more of a fun curiosity and excitement and opportunity that I have every day to work towards something that I think about. And then I talked about the difference in mentalities between me and maybe other people.
Right.
I think that's what really allowed me to get to the place that I did, was just this focusing on the day that I was in and being excited for what I was doing, not getting too far in the future, not thinking about all the other things I have to do, because I didn't know what was necessary. I don't know what was necessary for me to get to that place. I just knew what was right in front of me, and the people that would come in to give me the opportunities to gain the knowledge and wisdom to be able to get to that place.
Right.
I knew it would come in time, but I never tried to focus too much on the future of things. I like to just keep a level of excitement for what is to come. But as far as like reverse engineering an entire 5-year goal or plan, like, I don't have that. I don't do that.
Just enjoying the journey.
Yeah, I just stay in the excitement of what I'm noticing, I'm desiring, and then just noticing what's unfolding in front of me and just taking advantage of each opportunity as it shows up on a daily basis. And that's ultimately, I think, the most fun way to get what it is that we want. I don't think it'd be that fun to get what I want 10 years from now through reverse engineering it and just doing exactly the thing that I think is the right thing to do every single day. I like the element of mystery. I like the element of ambiguity. I like the feeling of knowing that something's coming, even though I can't see how. And that to me is living. Like, that's like the excitement of life right there, is knowing that I'm fully aligned within myself and doing what feels exciting and inspiring, and knowing somehow, some way, I'm getting to what I ultimately, the vision is in my mind, without having to mentally, consciously construct the entire process.
I like that. What were those first moments like right after you got the news about your neck?
I was shocked. Well, I was surprised. I was very surprised. Ironically,
were you feeling pain prior to that MRI?
In college, I had injuries.
Yep.
I knew it wasn't where it needed to be. I knew I was probably eventually going to have to deal with it, but it wasn't like I was in a chronic state of pain.
Right.
No. It was something they found on a precautionary MRI from an injury that I had in college that ultimately led to the demise of it. So I was not feeling physical pain, but when I got the news, I actually was very confused, because the general manager called me, which normally they'd have some no-name, say, hey, dude, you didn't pass your physical, like, you're done. So the GM called me, and he offered me a job on that same call when he told me I'd never be able to play again. He offered me a job as a scout. So when I told my agent that, he was like, dude, that's unheard of. I've only ever heard of that happening one other time. And the guy that got that job offered to him is now a general manager for the Jaguars. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. He's like, yeah, he must see you in very high regard. So I was very confused, getting told I'd never be able to play again.
Right.
While also being offered a job. I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, this is
Trying
crazy.
to process those two things.
Yeah. But then I found that in the next 2 weeks, when I was processing through it and got back to him, I didn't really care about continuing being in the sport of football. I more so loved what it provided me. So I didn't care about stats of other players or how good they were or recruiting players. I had an eye for it, and I felt like I'd be very good at it.
Right.
But I just loved what football provided me. And I think it's very easy.
That platform.
Exactly. The platform. My big ultimate goal was to be the Walter Payton Man of the Year. Like that's what I had it in my vision to be able to do. So football was a platform for me to be able to influence at the highest level. And so I found that when football ended, if it wasn't going to be football, clearly, because God said, dude, you're done. He ripped it from me. He knew that there was nothing else that I could possibly do to keep it going, that there have to be something else that existed beyond football that would give me an equal, if not bigger platform to be able to influence people at the highest level.
What kind of support team did you have around you during that time?
I had and always have had an incredible support team. My family has always been very close to me. For all of our home games, I'd get like 25 to 35 tickets. I'd get tickets from all the other players because my family all wanted to come and support me. So I'm very grateful for my family being so supportive. And I think that's what has given me a certain level of safety and permission to continue to pursue what I want at the highest level. Now, there also is a downfall to a lot of support as well, which I'm sure some people that have support will resonate with what I'm saying. Maybe they're not aware of it. Maybe they are. But when you do have, because I had so much support from the people close to me, they never put this pressure on me, but I felt a certain level of obligation to them to do what might continue to allow me to receive the support from them instead of what I truly wanted separate from their support.
Back to that people pleasing you were talking about.
Correct. So it was nice and incredible that I had the support, but then it felt like there's almost a level of obligation to doing something that I felt was going to continue to receive their support. And so that's where, branching off, moving to Miami, I separated from a certain element of religion, which definitely created a big rift in my family. I did some crazy stuff while I was here when I first moved here. I was a stripper for a month and a half. That was fun.
Nice.
A cool experience. But just doing different things that were beyond who I was in that environment.
Exploring life.
Being in South Dakota, exploring life, trying different things. And that's what allowed me to separate from that support. And the coolest part was it allowed me to be able to see that the support that I received from them wasn't entirely conditional based off of me doing something that I thought would appease them, which has allowed us to have a much better relationship. Now, it's gone through periods where my parents, we had a little bit of a riff, and that had to happen because the old relationship we had to shatter. It wasn't able to
had to evolve.
It had to evolve, and all relationships should as time goes on, if both people are remaining integrous with who they are in their own evolution.
Right.
But it was very necessary, and I'm super grateful that I allowed myself to break off and away from being a certain way to receive certain support so I can fully step into who I am and feel more aligned with who I am at the highest level.
On that topic, what's the biggest lesson that you learned from having to start over?
Ooh, it's so fun. Like it's odd, but like starting over is so fun because there's nothing there holding you back.
It's a blank canvas, right?
Exactly. But whereas when you have responsibility and you have a certain amount of money and now people are relying on you because you have an established thing, it's not that you're stuck in that, but now you have a certain level of obligation to continuing to grow and build and expand what you already have, which is a very different operating system than when you're first starting off in something. So for anybody that is just starting off in something, you have the world at your fingertips. You can be or do anything, and you don't have any type of responsibility or obligation to anyone. And that was one of the most fun, exciting parts about the beginning process of starting over was there's no level of expectation anybody has of me because I haven't built any type of foundation. So I can do or be anything. It's such a fun, explorative place to be.
What role did or does God play in your life?
It's a great question. My relationship with God has evolved, I think, as it should, a lot over the last 7 years. I grew up Christian, grew up teaching Sunday school. Now, it's not to say I wasn't, partying on a Saturday night and going to teach Sunday school on a Sunday, right? Like I was still doing that. But I don't have a religious affiliation anymore. But my relationship with God is very important. I don't believe I am God. I believe God works through me, and I position myself to be able to receive his guidance. I talk a lot about inspiration, heart-led inspiration. I believe that's inspiration that's planted on my heart by God. And by me working to stay in a state of receptivity and being open to that inspiration and letting go of any mental idea I think of what needs to happen by continually, an example I use is Jesus dying on the cross, being willing to go die on the cross, my old programming or my old ways of operating, or the parts of me that are scared or feeling scarce and not abundant. I let those go to die on the cross and
I love that.
be able to be resurrected again on the other side of it as a more holy version of myself that is a greater representation of how God designed me to be. So I don't use religion to be able to justify God's existence. I just know God exists. And I also understand that a certain level of humility I have comes from knowing I fall short of the inspirations that God plants in my heart. What happens when you start to be open to God's guidance is you become a channel to receiving all of which he wants for you. And so because I'm so open to receiving the guidance that God wants to give me, I see how big some of the things are, and I don't have the balls to be able to go after some of those things right now. So I'll take a step back and take micro inspirations that ultimately will lead me to those big things. But a certain level of humility I think that I have comes from knowing I do fall short from being able to follow through with the inspirations God plants on my heart. So most of the work I would say is just me as a human, as my computer mind based off my life experiences, is getting out of the way of the guidance God has. And that's what I do in my coaching. That gives me a platform to practice that. It's me just getting out of the way and allowing whatever to come through me, and implementing that in every area of life is what I work to do at the highest level. Me letting go, me, the old version of me, dying in each moment, allowing for God's guidance to come through.
I was just going to say that to me, our purpose here as humans is to consistently die and be reborn.
Yes.
You know, I feel like most people are stuck being the same person they were last year, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever it may be. No growth, no evolution process has occurred in their lives. And they wonder why life doesn't go the way that they want it to.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
It's very, very interesting how they can't see that this life is truly about you dying and being reborn.
Yes. Absolutely. That I love that you say that. That's what it is. I truly believe that. And I don't even know if it's necessarily growth, but more so just the dying off of old ways of being that are preventing you from staying aligned with God's inspiration. So I don't necessarily resonate with the term like growing and expansion, but more so the dying off of the parts of us that are preventing us from staying aligned with the information that God is trying to give us. So it's more of the dying off and getting out of the way rather than growing.
How important would you say alignment is in life?
It's everything. I think it's everything. That's what determines your general sense of well-being, is if you are aligned with God in your bigger mission for yourself, and not even necessarily bigger mission in regard to some grandiose idea of what you feel like is your big life purpose, which I don't necessarily believe in or agree, is the healthiest thing to do, because it causes us to attach to a certain identity that we think is what we should or need to do in that moment. But in reality, what is not being aligned is not allowing yourself in each moment, in each day, to be able to take the courageous action that God plants on your heart to do. Not necessarily from having to pursue a big grandiose idea. I try to always forget about any kind of grandiose idea of purpose for myself, so I can stay more in the present moment, which is ultimately going to allow myself to get what it is I want at the highest level, which is kind of a mind fuck.
Yeah.
But I try to let go of any kind of big grandiose purpose or vision and just try to stay aligned day to day in what is truly right for me. And that's what keeps life exciting too.
I agree. I think you need to put in that GPS coordinate and just forget about it, right? Otherwise, you're overthinking and you get anxious about the grand idea that may be overwhelming you. Just take small bites, you know, work your way there.
Yes.
I want you to break down for me what discipline means to you, and why is it so difficult for people to stick to it?
Well, I guess it depends on where you're at in your life. I would say discipline is something that I've always had an element of.
I can tell.
Being able to consistently stick to what I know is right. But I think there's a world that exists beyond discipline. And it's sort of like when you start a business, when a person starts a business, and the energy and effort that you're putting in isn't to get yourself to a place where your business is sustainable, isn't going to be the same energy that you're putting in to be able to grow and expand it beyond a place of stability. right? Survival, getting to a place of, okay, we're good compared to we're thriving is a very different operating system.
100%.
So being someone that has inherently had a certain level of discipline in my life and understanding that it's going to get me what I want, I've had to move. There's an operating system that has allowed me to move beyond discipline into a place of deeper levels of inspiration where it's not necessarily about the consistency over time of doing the same thing, but being able to take the big aligned actions that feel most exciting and inspiring to me. And I think it's the same thing in business where it's a couple big investments that you put into like a big A player or investing in a big time mentor that are ultimately going to allow your business to grow and expand beyond just the day-to-day minute little details that you have to focus on when you're growing your business to a place of stability. So as far as the general person or population though, with not being able to be disciplined, I think a lot of it is self-belief. There's an absence of self-belief, which doesn't allow people to be able to stick to the things that they know they need to do to be able to get what they want.
Probably also some fear in there.
Yeah, but I think the biggest thing is understanding that, because a lot of people that don't have what they want, they'll look at people that do consistently go after what they want and they'll think, oh, they're so confident.
They're so lucky.
Or they have it all together. Like, how do they be able to do that? But every day that I take action towards what I want, I feel scared all the fucking time. Like dying off of my old way of being that doesn't want to move toward what I want is omnipresent. Like I'm always dying and feeling the feeling of death over and over again to become a greater version of myself. So when I do that, it's not about me knowing that I believe in myself and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I do what I do because I want to believe more in myself.
Right.
And so I've done a lot of things, but it's not that I'm this incredibly confident person that's always feeling confident. It's just that I'm willing and able to do what I need to do even when I'm not feeling confident. And so I know when I do the things.
You not feeling confident, that happens?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's something I experience inside of myself, right? It's like it's a feeling of, oh, wow, I'm scared, or, oh, wow, this doesn't feel right to do.
Right.
Even though I know it's the right thing to do because I know my programming exists to try to not get me to do it. But I also have a deeper understanding of the mind as well, which helps me a lot. And I think that's really important for people to understand because they become victims to their mind instead of being able to use it as a tool or move beyond it. So naturally, I have different mental models that exist within my own mind to support me when my mind is not being confident. But most people, they have no idea, so they're fully identifying with all the voices that are popping up in their heads saying, you can't do this, you shouldn't do this, you don't deserve this.
They believe it.
They believe it. They identify fully with it, so they're not able to disassociate from it, which is one of the biggest, most powerful things that I feel like I'm able to do when things do get scary, when my programming of who I believe I am is questioned by the inspiration that I have planted on my heart by God, and being able to move beyond the voices that exist and just notice them instead of allowing them to drive you. And so if you can understand deeper levels of psychology and how the mind works and the mechanisms that it uses to not have to change, then it can really help you be able to not identify with them, which can allow you to feel more comfortable and safe going and being willing to die.
I'm really happy that you said that you get scared and that sometimes you lack confidence because people may look at you, NFL player, handsome guy, built. They may think, this guy, confidence lost? What? That's crazy. But it just shows that we're all human. And that the difference is your choice to understand that you still have to accomplish what you have to accomplish and you push through, right? You don't let those barriers get in your way or that overthinking to cloud you or judge you.
Well, I do though. That's the craziest part is like, I see how if I wasn't kind of scared, like the bigger and bigger things that I would be able to do, that's the craziest part is that I am aware of so many of the things that I could be doing if I just had the balls to do it, right? Like I'm in a season right now of really like reintegrating with the world. I spent the last 4 years being a little more inward and really like traveling around and not being in environments where I could speak the language and learning more about myself. But now it's like a big coming out season for me in regard to working with more and more people in person, doing more podcasts like this in person,
right?
And allowing my brand to just be seen fully. And so I see all the ways I miss out on opportunities to go speak to someone that I know that I should, or maybe don't say the thing I want to say because it feels like a little too much.
Right.
So my mind's always also seeing all the ways that I'm not fully stepping into what I could be. And I think that's also a superpower of mine, but it's something I have to manage because my brain is always constantly assessing how and where I fall short, as well as when I'm able to do the thing. So maybe some people's minds don't necessarily see how they're falling short.
Right.
So that's why they continue to do the same thing over and over again, because they really think that they're not falling short, or maybe they've programmed themselves to not notice where they do fall short because it feels more comfortable. So I think one of the most powerful things actually that allows me to keep moving forward is the permission I give myself to see where I fall short, which I don't think the human mind generally wants to do.
Right. Self-judge, kind of self-evaluate.
Yeah, well, and have it not be, self-evaluate. There's a difference between self-judging and self-evaluating.
Yes, for sure.
So I can be aware of where I'm falling short and not have that feeling of the awareness prevent me from continuing to move forward.
Right.
So there's an awareness that isn't followed by a bunch of guilt, which allows me to continue to move forward. Whereas other people, they might see where they fall short, and there's this idea of guilt and shame that doesn't allow them to continue to move forward. Whereas I see it more as this gives me an opportunity to humble myself. Be like, fuck, like I fell short, and almost it's a little relieving sometimes.
Yeah.
It feels relieving to fall short, at least for me.
You're able to learn the lesson.
Yes. And be like, fuck. And I even laugh at myself sometimes. I'm like, fuck, like I'm so fucking scared. Like, I'm like, oh my God, like just to go talk to this person
Same.
right now. Like, I'm so scared. And it's
human.
It's fun to do.
Yeah.
It's fun to do. Because honestly, it's not fun. I don't think it'd be fun getting what I want all the time and being able to be perfect all the time. Like,
Right.
that wouldn't be fun.
What do you learn from that? Yeah.
Because then there's no duality in life, and
There's
I think
no challenge.
there's no challenge.
Yeah.
And then if there's no challenge, then what's the point of continuing to want to move forward if I just get everything I want all the time?
Right. We need some friction.
Yeah, absolutely. So that the polarity, that just like the friction, the duality, the good, the bad, it's what makes the bad and the unpleasant is what makes the good and the pleasant feel good. Now, if you're used to always the bad, then I can see how it'll be difficult to want to try to move forward because you've been used to being disappointed all the time.
Right. You're stuck in the dark.
Right, stuck in the dark. But if you can establish understanding that the bad is what makes the good feel really good, then life will be a little different. It's like the accumulation of money. I know Andrew Tate talks about this, but I really resonate with what he says about what makes the money and success worth it is the time that you spent in the process of getting it. It's like the time when you were broke, or the time when you didn't have it and you believed in yourself and you're pushing really hard to make it happen. Like,
nobody else believed in you.
Nobody else believed in you.
Yeah.
Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but it's the time before it when you're like trying to make it happen and make it work that makes it so fulfilling when you finally do get it. And I resonate with that a lot.
Same.
It's like the time that I spent by myself, working my ass off. I didn't really have anything, and just like holding on to this vision that I thought was going to happen and I fully believed, but there wasn't really the true physical evidence in my reality to support it.
Right.
And just knowing that I've made it happen, like, and obviously there's levels to it. I'm going to continue to make bigger and bigger things happen.
For sure.
But to know that little vision I had being by myself in that space when not many people believed in me, and I had a deeper understanding of what I knew I wanted, and now I'm having it, that's what makes it all worth it. So without those experiences, then having the things isn't worth it. That's like why people that are born into riches, they most of the time end up addicted to some substances.
Right.
I can't appreciate anything they have because there's no duality. There's no, I don't know what it would be like to not have it.
Right.
So it's such a blessing to be in times when we don't have things. And I see that and I recognize that. And sometimes it's difficult because I think it's normal for the human mind to continue to think that where we want to be is better than where we are now. But
right.
I always try to come back.
Problem.
Yeah, definitely. I always try to come back and think about the feeling I'll get when I finally get the thing that I'm working so hard to try to figure out. And the resistance I experience right now will be equivalent into the fulfillment that I'm going to get when I finally make it happen. So that's really what allows us to appreciate the incredible things that do end up happening, is the time and energy spent when we didn't have it, being in the place of not knowing if it's going to happen, but still somehow moving forward.
You mentioned superpower. I literally have a question written down. What is your superpower? So let's go into that. Go deeper into that, because you touched on it, but let's open it up a little bit.
Yeah, so I think within each superpower, it's the biggest blessing, but also the biggest curse. It's like the biggest thing that we have the capacity for can also be the most limiting thing as well. And so I think behind the majority of some of the things that people perceive as the worst thing about them is actually the biggest gift, and vice versa. So I would say my deep levels of empathy and compassion, I think growing up, and at times it could limit me from going after what I want selfishly from the thoughts, feelings, and opinions of other people.
Right.
But it's given me a level of awareness of people and of ultimately, I think, getting what I want that gives me the ability to do the crazy things that I do and somehow get paid for it. As far as facilitating the change of people that I do, not having a methodology that I use, it's all just like energy and being able to me being the product, not having to rely on some other product outside of me. So I don't think I'd be able to speak about myself in the way that I do or do what I do if I didn't have the empathy that I have for others in knowing how people work and function and being able to facilitate the change that I do. So it's like both ends of the spectrum with it. It's a superpower because it's given me a lot of incredible things, having a deep level of empathy, but also limiting at times because I can feel the feelings and thoughts of other people while I'm in the process of pursuing what I want. That could be limiting at times.
It's powerful.
Thank you.
How did you decide to become a leadership coach? What was that transition for you like?
So it was never really a decision. It was more of just a following, like following what feels exciting and inspiring to me. Talk about those micro inspirations that God plants in my heart. It's not like I'm like, oh, I'm going to be this. It's more of this intrigues me. This is exciting. I want to move towards this. Oh, I want to work with people doing this. Oh, this is kind of a natural gift and skill set that I have. Let me show people how to be able to do this.
Right.
That somehow eventually landed me in the place of doing what I'm doing now. So there wasn't, I don't believe, a lot of intentionality behind getting to a point where I'm saying I'm a leadership coach, but more so just a byproduct of consistently following those micro inspirations that I believe are planted on my heart by God that got me to this place of, oh, looking around where I am right now, I'm like, oh, this is cool. Without actually having to plan all of it or understand it beforehand. So I don't know if that necessarily answers your question, but it was more so just a happening based off of following my curiosity and my excitement since football getting done.
Who are your favorite leaders? Who do you look up to that helped you mold who you are today?
So there's specific people that have specific skill sets that I admire, but there isn't anyone that I want to emulate their life. Like I want to emulate my life. I truly believe I'm a specific individual that has a different path than anybody else. And so as far as people that have skill sets, though, that I admired, my grandfather growing up, I think was a big one. My dad has a lot of skill sets that I admire as well. One in particular, though, that really sticks out as of the last 4 years is Matthew McConaughey. His book Green Lights is I resonate with him so much in regard to how he functions and how he thinks, and really put
I can see that.
People even say I look like him. I don't think I really look like him, but maybe it's our facial expressions. Oh, yeah, that's what people say, which is kind of a interesting concept. So I just always really gravitated towards him and the way he's lived his life and the wild, crazy things that he's done and how he thinks about things has always been something that I've resonated with. So I'd probably have to say him.
I was going through your site and I saw that you have 3 different phases of coaching. Can you break that down for us?
Yeah. So the funny part is I think a lot of coaches will have potential clients or clients come in and the client will tell them what they want, but that's coming from a place of thinking that client somehow is in the perfectly aligned state within themselves to know what they want. Right. And I never assume that, ever. I never assume that a client is perfectly in an aligned state to tell me exactly what it is they want. So I hear what they're saying and I take it in and that's like our starting point.
Right.
But I really don't know what their heart truly desires until we take off all the masks that are there. I don't know how many masks are there until I start getting in and poking around.
Got to peel those layers back.
Exactly. And so to do that, I have to first get them out of a place of survival. So most of the time there's low-hanging fruit or things in their life that are causing the majority of their mental discomfort. So I naturally have to resolve those things first before I can go any deeper into who they are through forcing getting to the core of, let's say, their heart. I have to get rid of all the stuff around it first. So by removing a lot of the obstacles or removing the low-hanging fruit of the things that are consuming the majority of their negative headspace, that allows them to be more of, instead of being like this, they're like more open and they can see much more of what's happening around them because they're not bogged down by problems that they're experiencing.
One-dimensional.
Correct. So removing the low-hanging fruit is always the first part. And then the next part is now they're in a state of openness, receptivity, because we've removed the masks of who they were and also the micro problems that they were experiencing.
So you get down to their truth, right?
Yes.
Their raw truth of who they are.
Strip them naked.
Yes.
Now they're naked. They're open. They're ready and willing to be able to start to put the clothes on that actually resonate with their hearts that fit the best.
Right.
So then that's the more fun part is the creation element of things where
Build them back up.
Yes, exactly. So now they're in the place of pure creation, and now we can play in more of the quantum space of creating and building from a place of what their heart truly desires, not what their masks are saying what they want.
Right. Wow. You began in the fitness world.
Mm-hmm.
What does the gym mean to you?
If you are disconnected from your body, then it's going to be very difficult to get what your heart truly wants. I think our body is a vessel to be able to communicate with us, to tell us what is right and not right for us. I think about the prehistoric days, the cavemen. They didn't have a whole lot of mental understanding of things, but they did know how their body responded to things. So
Right.
they were very in tune with nature and the flow and function of things. They might get a certain intuitive sense. They could feel it in their arm and they'd know that it's going to rain. Right? They're very in tune in that way. Now we're very disconnected because we don't have to live in a state of survival anymore and have to really care about what's going to come with the weather because we can just go on an app and be like, oh, well, in 1 hour from now, it's going to rain. And 2 hours from now, it's not going to. So
Right.
we don't have to stay connected to those parts of ourselves that once were so intuitively connected to nature.
It was a requirement back then.
Correct. And now it's not, but I would say that it is because that's where we can actually gain connection with our deep intuition, where I would say that God that exists within us that can flow through us.
Right.
So by being connected to our bodies, we can have a greater understanding of what truly is and isn't right for us. But there's a process that the majority of people have to go through to be able to connect with their bodies. And I mean, we're living in a world that is inherently created to disconnect us from our bodies with the food, the type of food, the disconnecting us from any need to have any type of survival instincts at all. So it's pretty scary, the state of the world in regard
really
to
is.
how it's inspiring people to be disconnected from their bodies. But as far as like being in the gym and working out, like it's an important, intricate part of my life, but I also don't think that it's necessarily necessary for a level of masculinity, because I think every man has a specific path that isn't necessarily designed to be jacked and have tattoos and
Right.
be incredibly athletically fit.
Right.
I think it can be important, but it's more about creating an environment where you're connected to your body and finding some type of movement that resonates with you and being able to eat and drink in accordance to what feels most connected to us. Staying connected and establishing a relationship with that deeper sense of intuition that our body can ultimately tell us if we're connected to it.
I love that. I'm all about body being balanced in business, the 4 pillars of life that help you have it all. And it starts with the body. Right?
Yes.
If you don't focus on your body, the alignment for the other 3 can't happen.
Yes.
This is your vessel. This is what you use to navigate the world. And if you're not taking care of it, however that may be, then you won't be able to show up as your best self. So
Absolutely. You're disconnected.
Right.
You're disconnected from your body and the cues that it's telling you. How are you supposed to be connected, really, truly connected with other people?
Right.
Like, you can't. So that is a core pillar and foundation, I think, first off. And it's not a mistake that I went through the process that I did in regard to the different seasons of life that I've worked with people in different capacities. So helping people master the physical body externally. Now let's master the internal inflammation-based body that's separate from just the physical appearance.
Right.
Now let's get to the more mental, emotional. Now let's get to a level of expansion and openness beyond just gaining a connection with your body and being connected to your intuition, right? So I think there's levels to consciousness and how it works. But if your foundational piece of being connected to your body is not there, I mean, good luck being able to truly create from a place of pure inspiration within your heart. I don't know how pure it can actually be.
It's like when they say you can't love others until you truly love yourself, right? And if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not really loving yourself. So you got to get to a point where you are truly loving yourself, taking care of yourself, so you can do the rest, which is strip naked, rebuild yourself, grow, and elevate to a level where you can be your best self.
Yes. If you don't like the way that you look naked, it's going to be difficult to take all your clothes off.
For sure.
Right? So if you can like the way that you
It
look
definitely
naked, it can
helps.
be easier to strip down.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, you could talk about that just like physically, but also metaphorically in the way of
100%.
if you like the way that you look and you feel good in your body, then you're going to be less in a state of scarcity. You're going to be more open to changing and shifting and evolving as a human.
Right.
So it's going to make your evolution more easy, naturally, if you like the way that you look naked. I think it makes sense to me, at least.
That should be on a bumper sticker.
Throw it on there. Like the way you look naked.
You mentioned a little bit about the state of America and the world. What is your current view of that state of America and the world?
Well, I think there's no question that there's a lot of like chaos happening, which is kind of ironically fun to me. COVID was something that was fun for me.
Tell me why.
Because there's a level of stimulation that comes with the survival way of being that I feel very connected to.
Okay.
So we
I can
live in
see
a
that.
world that is very, everything is like, I can go to the Starbucks and tweet about how bad the world is, right? Like, how bad is the world really if I can
Right.
go to fucking Starbucks and tweet about how bad it is as I'm sipping my Ex Grande oat milk Frappuccino, right? Like,
Right.
honestly. So when we got to a point where people were frantically going and taking all the toilet paper from Trader Joe's, I'm sitting in all of that. I'm like, ooh, something's happening. Like, whew, I feel alive. It's the same thing like in big games for me. Like I always,
Right.
I felt that same feeling of like, there's a lot on the line. Like, here we go. Lights are on, baby. Like showtime.
Time to shine, yeah.
Exactly. So I think it's actually good for all of us to realize that we're not these overly important beings that are better than everything else in nature. Like we are susceptible to bad events and
Right. We're one with it.
we're one
part
with
of
it.
yeah.
Exactly. And we're not above it. And so what I do with the understanding that I have of knowing that shit could completely hit the fan, like I can be with the tension of knowing that things are crumbling or could be crumbling around us and there could be a new world order and there could be mass chaos that happens. But I can be with the tension of knowing that and not allow it to control all my decisions. Like, because regardless, for me to be as prepared as possible for whatever is to come,
Right.
I can't allow all of the emotional chaos of that to change my decisions right now. It's the same thing I talked about in the beginning. I have an awareness of what probably is and could be coming and also come right back to where I am, because the only way for me to be as prepared as possible for what could happen comes down to me coming back to right where I am and where my inspirations are right now, and trusting that God would never lead me in the wrong way, and that whatever inspirations he plants on my heart right now are ultimately going to be the things that are going to allow me to be as prepared as possible for what's to come. But I also know that if that's not the case and I die, that's fine too. So it's being with the tension of both those things. I'm okay with dying tomorrow, while also, while I'm here, being willing and open to receive whatever guidance God has. And I think those two things, the willingness to die tomorrow and the openness I have to knowing that if I am meant to survive whatever crazy shit is about to happen, I will gain the guidance right now in this moment. And the only way for me to properly receive the guidance is through being here right now, not through being obsessed about what a big hypothetical of what could actually happen.
How, if it was in your control, how would you fix things? How would you change things?
I don't really think about that, because I try to just stay very focused on what I can control. And so I don't spend time thinking about how the world could be better or how it could be fixed. I more so am just open to whatever direction that things go. I also, Alan Watts is one of my biggest, somebody that I've resonated so much with. I've listened to everything that he's spoken about over and over again. And fixing problems only leads to more problems. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't try to find cures to cancer, and which is a whole nother topic, or solve world hunger or poverty. But it's important to understand that we solve problems because that's just what people do, not because there's real problems that actually matter that need to be solved, which is just a perspective that I have. So if that's the case, if the problems that we have here on Earth actually don't really matter, and knowing that when we do solve those problems, it'll just lead to more problems, and we'll just continue to just do that because that's who we are as humans, just solving problems perpetually, it allows me to not see it as big of a deal as other people might see it as, like that are like lost in it, thinking that it is the end all be all and that things are that important. My mind doesn't really navigate the spaces of that. Like, I'm here now, not trying to solve all the problems that the world might have. But also at the same time, I have a deeper understanding that if I am meant to solve many of the problems that the world has, it's only going to come from me fully being immersed and locked in and present in where I am right now. And where I am right now isn't concerned about those things. So maybe there's something happening where I'm being prepared at a deeper level through being lost in my own experience to be able to handle whatever pressures that might come from being in a position to have to deal with solving problems of the world.
It's very powerful. Where you can just stand in your own truth and not worry about anything outside of that. It's very powerful.
Yeah, thank you. But the truth
it's
is
rare.
Yeah, having that capacity for sure.
Yeah.
When you say that, it really opens my eyes to how maybe far I've come in the process of it, of being able to be removed from it. But I mean, you just have to think about it practically too. There's always been chaos. There's always been war. But for some reason now, I'm not downplaying a school shooting by any means. It's not good. But it's like there's been so much more chaos in the world at different periods of time, but it's magnified because of our ability to have access to seeing it over and over and over again.
Instantly.
So everybody thinks that everything is so fucking terrible in the world, but the truth is we've never been safer. Like in the history of the world, we've never been safer than we are right now. But people are lost in the sauce of the access to unpleasant events that overshadows their ability to be able to be present here now and to see the reality of the situation, which is we have never been safer.
And it consumes them.
Yeah. It's wild. And so then they go to a place of thinking that everything is terrible and that all these things have to be solved and try to solve all the problems. But I also think that's a mechanism that the brain might have to use to not have to take accountability for creating something for itself. So obsessing over other problems is a mechanism of the brain. It's like a soothing mechanism.
Procrastination.
Right. It's a soothing mechanism to the brain uses to not have to take responsibility for itself and changing itself.
Yep.
So I've found oftentimes in some of the people that are the most paranoid about those things, they're actually the most avoidant too. And if you think about it, it is easier for the brain to obsess about problems that are outside of itself than to actually solve its own. Right. And our brain will always resort back to what's more comfortable. So naturally, there's going to be people that obsess over those problems that are going to prevent themselves from being able to do what they need to do right now for themselves to be able to create something, not because it's actually true that they need to solve these problems, but because it's an easier way for the brain to soothe itself than to actually move towards what it wants.
You said something that I thought was also very powerful. You said that I can die tomorrow and be okay with it. And I think a lot of people don't see life that way. They're not okay with dying tomorrow. So they're trying to do everything possible to preserve this life and not end it.
Yeah. I die every day. I fucking die every day, dude. As I talk about the discomfort of stuff, like I give myself permission to do the uncomfortable things over and over and over again, which feel like death.
Right.
So I'm dying and being reborn all the time. So me passing and dying doesn't really feel like that crazy or profound of a thing. Because every day I feel like I do it. Whereas other people that cling to life, they cling to all the things that they have. They cling to their identity of who they are. And they try so hard to not let go of any of the control by keeping everything in the perfect little box that makes them feel safe and comfortable. Naturally, they're going to not want to die. So if we can get beyond the place of having to control everything and having to make sure everything is perfectly as we want it and know that we just have to stay in the flow of life and being able to be willing to die every day for the inspirations God has planted on our hearts, then I think more people would probably be okay with dying. And the people that I do talk to that are also okay with dying, they live the same way.
Oh, yeah.
They live the same way. The
100%.
people that don't live that way are afraid because they're, I haven't done this or I haven't done that or I need to do this. But it's like, for
Just
what? That shit doesn't matter.
Right.
None of it matters. Just what matters is right now and me following the inspirations God has planted on my heart right now. And as long as I consistently do that, then I'm also not worried about the afterlife too in that way. I'd be worried about the passing if I didn't live in accordance to the internal compass I believe God has planted on my heart. I'd be more worried about that regardless of heaven or health.
I agree. Or religion.
Correct. Or any type of religion.
Yeah,
I think that's ultimately the indicator of what may and will happen post living in existence on this earth.
I agree.
So I also have that idea, which doesn't allow me to be very influenced by the religion, knowing that if I really want to know where somebody's at in their spirituality or connection with God, I look at how much they try to control their life. Or how much they try to cling to what they have compared to being open to what may be best for them.
Right.
So you can say whatever you want about how religious you are, how much you believe in God, but that is the ultimate indicator beyond what people's words are saying. I look at that.
Do you have kids?
Not yet.
Do you want to be a father?
Yeah.
How important is that to you?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That'd be amazing. If I pass tomorrow, I obviously wouldn't have kids, but I believe it's plenty on my heart to have a lot of kids. I don't know how many exactly, but
I think you'd be a great dad.
oh, thank you. Thank you. I feel that.
Yeah.
I feel that it would.
I have 2 little ones. I have a 4-year-old and an 18-month-old.
You love it?
I love it.
How gratifying is it
It's
just to be able
amazing.
to talk about bringing you back to the present moment?
Oh,
Like
every single time that I look at my 4-year-old, I'm in the now. He wakes me up every day at 6:45, comes to my bed and jumps on me.
how could you not be present for that experience?
Exactly. Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. It
Such
really
a beautiful
is.
experience to have little ones to bring you back to right now.
Every single day. They keep you on your toes.
And that's part of it though too.
Yeah.
Is it the little shitstorms that they throw or the things that they do
yeah.
that you wouldn't expect that cause you to come what? Right back to the present moment.
Exactly.
So the beautiful things, but also the things that might not feel so beautiful in the moment because you got a million other things to worry about. But you got to worry about this thing that you think shouldn't be a problem. It's like that also brings you back to the the present moment, right?
Yes, 100%. And they say the darnest things. They're so open,
Gosh, man.
unfiltered,
Yes.
raw. You know, it really helps you evaluate things in life and what's really important and what's not.
Well, I can imagine too, just because they are such open, pure, honest channels of whatever's really there.
Yes.
Just to like take in what they say and be like, oh shit. I feel like I would just like, I feel like my son or my kids would just have so much like insight,
Yes.
you know, that I'd be able just to listen to and take into account and be like, wow, like there's really no biases here. There's not, they're just open.
One
They're
thing
just
I
sharing.
one thing I learned from my 4-year-old is that you need to live life on your own terms. When he's done, he's done. Like there's nothing that's going to make him continue. Whatever it may be. Food, movie, TV, being somewhere. When he's done, Daddy, I'm done. I want to go home. And I respect that. Because it's like you have your own mind, you're independent, and no one's going to force you to do something that you don't want to do.
Yes.
When you're done, sometimes and people try to keep pushing it and pursuing it and keep trying to make it happen. It's done, it's done. Let it go.
Yes.
Move on.
Mm.
So I think seeing that from a 4-year-old's perspective really gave me light and really allowed me to let shit go in my life that I was trying to hold on to and make it happen, you know?
Yes.
That was very unique.
So powerful. I think for me, I talk about the double-edged sword of my superpower of empathy. It's like I can establish such deep, intimate relationships with people, but there is times where like that bond just needs to be. It's like no, it doesn't need to be resolved. It doesn't need to.
Right.
We don't have to come back and try to like solve this or get to
Right.
get
There's
to a
nothing to
common
do.
ground.
Yeah.
It just isn't it.
Yeah.
And it just can be okay to dissolve. And that's something that
Yes.
for me that when you spoke about that really like hit, and I'm like, oh fuck, like that's it right there. And I've gotten substantially better at it in my ability to, but doesn't mean there's still tension.
Oh,
In
yeah.
the experience of it, right? So, but there's not tension that exists within that child, which is so powerful.
There's no fucks given.
No, God. So I can do it, but that's the dying off for me though, man. It's
Right.
Like, it's like, oh, I feel like I need to have some level of deeper understanding before we like sever this.
Right.
No,
No,
we don't.
we don't.
That's it.
Let that shit
Goodbye.
go.
Yes, powerful. Thanks for sharing that.
No problem. You were talking a little bit earlier about some dreams, some goals that scare you. What are those dreams? And is that something that you see yourself accomplishing in the next 5 years?
Oh, I have no idea as far as the time frame. I try to let go of any time frames.
Or
I've seen
forget a time frame, but do
yeah.
you see that happening in the near future?
I don't know how soon. It could happen tomorrow, or it could happen in 15 years from now. I don't know. I see myself being able to perform human transformation at even at higher and higher levels, quicker and quicker, from touch to one word. And it just being able to do that at higher and higher levels. So I don't know if and when that will happen, but that's just what I see.
Have you read Power versus Force?
Yes.
Do you know your Hawking scale? Do you know your Hawking level? It's got to be super high.
I haven't actually done that. I know the scale, but I've never done it.
You should. You got to be at least over 500.
Yeah, I don't know. I've actually kind of not wanted to do it because I don't know if I really want to know. Because then, like, I feel like it might disconnect me from just staying on where I'm at, where I'm going. But I don't know what that would do for me.
I don't think so.
What do you think it would do for me? So
I know my Hawking scale because I work with a spiritual healer twice a month.
Who's able to tell you?
She's able to tell me. Yeah, she's able to tell me. So I'm 571, which is pretty fucking high. You got to be at least there or higher because you vibrate at a whole different level. Oh, so what I think it does for me is it helps me gauge where I've been to where I am. And it puts into understanding that because I vibrate differently, there are certain responsibilities that are required of me that I need to maintain.
Interesting.
That's really what it does for me.
I don't know if I believe that. And that's what I wouldn't want to happen, because so much of what allows me to continue to move on is like moving beyond responsibility, like getting beyond that part and staying with the inspiration, because I might think that where I'm at requires me to be a certain way. But if I just try to be that certain way, I can't actually embody that certain way. I have to go through experiences that might feel like not being the thing that I feel responsible to be. Right. But in order for me to actually become that thing that I feel like I need to be, I have to go through where I'm really at. So my brain can definitely do that. It can go to that place, oh, well, I'm here. This is where I'm really at. Therefore, I should act or be this way. But then I'm not actually being that. That just disconnects me from the present moment of the experiences I need to have to truly become it. So I might know I'm meant to be this like incredibly powerful person that can facilitate healing and change at an unbelievable level. But in order for me to get there, I have to be where I am now, regardless of what my brain perceives as being getting me to that place or not. I have to mentally disconnect from all of that.
Right.
So maybe we have different thought processes surrounding it, but I believe that letting go of the responsibility and stepping into just deeper levels of where I'm at right now, it will ultimately get me to that place beyond what my mind thinks that it should do or needs to do. Because I think that's where reading can oftentimes get in the way of people too. Like unearned knowledge or understanding can prevent experience. And without experience, it's very difficult for us to fully embody certain characteristics or traits. Let's say like enlightenment, for example.
Right.
So people might actively try to seek being enlightened rather than experiencing life at the highest level that can ultimately give them the awareness and understanding of what it is to be enlightened. And then they're like, oh, I didn't even know that I was enlightened. And people are like, oh yeah, you're enlightened. They're like, what the fuck? Like, okay. I'm just unaware of it. Right. I think there's beauty in that. That's where I talk about Forrest Gump being my idol. Like nobody else says this, but Forrest Gump, I think, is like, I should have said Forrest Gump and even talk about him earlier, but it's, that dude lived the most epic life possible. And how consciously aware of himself was he? None.
Right.
He had zero conscious awareness of anything.
Zero.
But somehow, I know he's a made-up movie character, but somehow he's in the cover of Runner magazine.
Oh, he's
a war hero.
Yeah.
Like he ends up having a child with the woman of his dreams. He's a world-renowned ping pong player. He opens and creates one of the most well-known shrimp companies in the world, Bubba Gump.
Yep.
Without having any type of awareness of himself in any way. And I'm like, there's a fucking genius in that.
There is. There's
a
power
genius
in that for sure.
Where he doesn't feel any type of obligation or conscious obligation or responsibility to anything. I just do that. Or I just did that. And he's so connected to that place of knowing within himself that it just manifests in his reality without him having to consciously be aware of it.
I think for me, where the responsibility part of it comes in for me is that I was a big fuck up growing up. Hanging out with the wrong crowd, doing a shitload of drugs. I was expelled from high school in my junior year. So for me, nobody thought that I would amount to anything. And I carried this burden of being an immigrant and having to not allow my parents' sacrifice to go in vain. So I think for me, being able to compare where I was to where I am is a good constant reminder of what my values are and where my standards need to be. I think that's why I view it that way.
So do you feel like if you don't, you could fall back?
Oh, yes. I do. I do feel that, not that I could fall back, but like I'm easier to be tempted to.
What if you couldn't? Like, what if you actually like couldn't
Couldn't be tempted?
Well, like you can never, you know way too much to ever go back to ever being a resemblance of what
Which is
that
how I feel
represents.
now. I feel now that I'm at a place that like I don't ever even have the want or need to go back to that lower vibration. Doesn't do anything for me because I'm beyond that.
So then why would you feel the need to have to implement behavior or responsibility to make sure that you never resort back to it?
I guess because I like to have data and I like to be able to compare and contrast. So having that outline of goal or responsibility just keeps me on track. It keeps me knowing that.
You feel like you need that to be able to continue to move toward what your heart desires?
I feel like right now where I am, I do.
Cool.
I feel like it gives me. Do you know how you put up those little side rails in bowling?
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
it just keeps me in line. It just keeps me knowing which route I need to head. You know, I feel like in my day to day, it's very easy for me to get comfortable. And I don't want to allow myself to get too comfortable. It's probably the best way to put it.
Makes sense.
How would you interpret that? How do you interpret that?
That if you don't have these certain like strict parameters up, then you'll naturally fall into behavior that deteriorates all of the things you've been able to do as a result of moving beyond who you were.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you're saying?
A little bit.
A little bit, or
Yes.
not? Okay.
Yes.
What if you didn't need to do that, and if there was a certain level of behavior that was acceptable that you might perceive as being rest, but actually is necessary for you to continue to be who you desire to be? But because you have an association of those things being something that represents maybe laziness or passivity, you're not able to take full advantage of those things that ultimately will get you what you want.
No, I do agree with that. I agree with that 100%. What I mean is more things like so I've been married for 8 years. We've been together 18 years. And I used to cheat a lot. I had to get to a place where
So
what I'm saying is I had to get to a place where I had to start really loving myself and really learning to appreciate what I've built in my family.
So you think you being with other girls was an example of you not loving yourself?
I do.
Why?
Because every time I did it, I felt the pleasure, but then I felt a piece of my soul dying every single time. I felt further and further disconnected from source and from what I should be doing. And once that clicked for me, once that aligned for me.
Well, do you think that was the case because the actions actually were demonstrating disconnection, or because you were lying?
Both. It was self-sabotage in a way. You know, I was just using it as as an escape, right? As a way to hide my pain and not deal with what I was really feeling. So I would just fuck it away, literally. And I had to get to a place where I had to understand what was happening and why I was doing it, and really reframe how I was living to get to a place where I can start really loving myself and really loving my family and what I've built. So I think for me, the reminder of that responsibility is something that I enjoy being reminded of, because it shows me how connected to source I am today and how disconnected I was previously. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think the one thing to be careful with all of that is being careful not to attach the actions to being the source of the pain, right? Like not making it about the liquid coming out of it, more about the spout. Like not the way the liquid comes out, but the spout in which it's pouring from.
Right.
You following?
I do.
I think it's very easy to look at, let's say, a period of life where we're not very proud of, or that we look at as being a very disconnected time, and say, oh, these things are the things that I did because I was disconnected. But actually, if you create an association with those things as being disconnected, it can fuck up your ability to be able to stay connected to inspiration that may resemble some element of those things in a future or present season. So if you can move beyond the association of those things, the things that you did as being wrong or bad, and more make it about the disconnection that you had within yourself, it can allow for more flow, because there's less your brain perceives as being bad or wrong. You following?
I do. Are you trying to say that like some things just need to occur?
I'm saying that the action that you took as a result of disconnection wasn't the problem. The disconnection was.
I agree.
But our brains can very easily look at the thing and be like, oh, that thing was the problem. Let's say, for example, someone's not, they're lazy. They're very lazy, and they're having a difficult time being motivated. And they finally realize, like, hey, like, in order for me to get what I want with my life, I can't be a lazy piece of shit and sit on the couch all the time.
Right.
So they develop an association with anything they perceive as being lazy as being wrong. And so then they develop this opposite end of the spectrum, which is on roughly the same playing field of consciousness. The other end of the spectrum might perceive as being better,
right?
But in reality, they've just gone to the other end of the spectrum and then the same element of extreme.
There's no middle.
Correct. So by stepping into a place of, once you establish an element of like discipline and being able to go after what you want, going back and saying, hey, just because it's no longer winter and I don't need to wear my winter clothes doesn't mean fuck winter. Winter's terrible. I hate it.
Right.
Just because we're moving into spring. Because there will inevitably always be a season that comes back around of things that have to do with the winter, and will be very necessary to put the winter clothes back on. But if then winter comes back around, you're like, oh, I threw out all my winter clothes. I threw away my snowboard and my skis and all my Christmas stuff because I said fuck winter.
Right.
Then it's going to be much more difficult to be able to reintegrate that season. So we can go to a place where we're not judging or condemning a past season to inspire us to move on to another, and just be open and willing to move on to a more connected season. It can allow for less resistance when that season will inevitably come back around, right, of some of the actions that you took during the season when you don't have very much pride in. Following?
I do.
You feel like the neutrality of that. It's a little more like, oh, it's not like fuck this. I can't believe I was here. This is terrible. Oh my god, where I'm at right now is amazing. It's not that. It doesn't have to be that, and it shouldn't be that.
Right.
That's that. Then you have to. Then what people do is they try to like do whatever they can to stay up here, and try to control everything.
It's that roller coaster ride.
Exactly.
The low lows, high highs.
Exactly. Which inevitably will come another crash.
For sure.
Because of the tension associated with trying to keep and maintain this place, instead of treating it like the breath, which is breathe in, get all the oxygen. Okay, this feels good. Okay, breath out. Hey, I'm still okay. Breath comes back. Right, and allowing that flow to naturally happen, where it's not this like, but just kind of like this like flow along the way.
I love how you just mentioned that, because that's actually where I was. I was seeking peaks, right?
Yes.
I was in the constant roller coaster ride of looking for that next big high. But now I'm definitely more even kill.
Yes.
And I think that's what my evolution has done for me. That realization of you were just chasing higher highs every single time. Doesn't matter what the action was. It was my unalignment, my inability to be in the now was what was causing me to consistently go after higher highs.
Yes.
And that realization changed my life.
So powerful.
Yeah.
So powerful. So being able just to be with the knowing of, okay, this is no longer right for me to do this, and now it's right for me to do this, and just staying in that place of open receptivity to whatever the inspirations might be in the present moment without having to have negative associations with things that you did as a result of not being connected.
Right.
That just allows for much more flow in life.
100%.
You don't have to condemn past seasons to be able to move on to another. I don't have to
I
talk shit
agree.
about winter to be able to be okay with moving on
Just
to spring.
let it go.
Spring's happening either way, man.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
So's
So-
winter.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Thankfully, we're in
100%.
Florida. It's not that cold.
Yeah, right. The iguanas though, they don't feel very
Man,
good. They'll
they're
fall out of the trees
all over my yard.
everywhere.
Everywhere, bro. They're all over. These iguanas are everywhere.
It's so fun though to see them.
Keyen, this has been amazing. Let the people know where they can find you. What's your IG? What's your website? If you have any events upcoming, let them know.
Yeah, so there are events that are coming up, but it's better to just follow me on Instagram, official Keyen. You can find me on my website, keyenlage.com, which I'm sure we'll put the spelling to those
100%.
in the show notes.
I'll put it down in the
There it
description
is.
below.
And then Instagram though, Instagram's a spot, official Keyen.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure meeting you. Great conversation. Great getting to know you. Thank you for driving up here and coming to my beautiful studio for this podcast. And I really appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Dude, it was my absolute pleasure. This was fucking awesome. So thank you for facilitating such an awesome conversation.
No problem. Guys, how dope was that? If you like this, please hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a wonderful day.
This is the Leo CLIMACO podcast.